Especially millennials make up to 27% of the South African population. This translates into a buying power of 14 million people. Previously, research had shown that some young people get excited when spending through credit by opening clothing accounts and buying cell phones and accessories to look good, thus making them big spenders. But this results in serious indebtedness. Through this trend, consumer power is falling swiftly into the hands of millennials. And according to the Deloitte Millenial Survey, knowing where and why they spend their money is critical for business growth. But can this be sustained to spur consumer spending figures? Let's ask Derek Cikes. He's the commercial director at Payflex. Thank you very much for coming.
Hi Colin, it's always good to be here.
All right, let's re-examine the current spending patterns of young people based on historical factors of them really loving to get credit.
So, we talk about millennials and we're always associated with young people. And maybe they are young, but what's very interesting to me is that if you want to define millennials specifically, it's anybody up to the age of 38 now. So anyone born up until 1997 is considered a millennial. So it's actually a very broad group. And there's two things about that group. We like to call them the thumb generation, and I think I've mentioned that to you before, because these are the guys that will find a date with their thumbs, they'll find food with their thumbs, they'll find a job with their thumbs. And this is a market that has a lot more education, a lot more exposure to the world as a whole through the internet, through digital means. And as a result, they have a better understanding of what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. So you mentioned earlier that they like credit. Well, actually, what we're seeing is that the millennial around the world does not like credit. They want to stay away from credit. In fact, one of the anecdotal pieces of evidence there is that there is more likely to be a search for how to cut up my credit card than how to get a credit card on YouTube than any other search.
Okay, so is this actually spurred up by the notion that South Africa is a consumerist economy more than being productive?
Very much so, and I think also the numbers are a little bit skewed because in South Africa, access to credit was very easy. In fact, there wasn't a bank in South Africa that wasn't trying to phone you to give you a credit card for free as quickly as possible. So the fact that the banks were giving away credit doesn't necessarily mean that it was being used. So a stat that we saw the other day is that in credit card usage is up by 1%, whereas debit card usage is up by 4% year on year. So we're seeing more and more that age group of 18 through 38 using debit cards to do transactions online as opposed to using credit cards online.
It looks like there's so much research that has been released on this matter to understand how the market is operating. So let's go to the differential capital report. South Africans are overly indebted with a total outstanding unsecured borrowings of around 225 billion rand.
Yep. That's right. And that's now spread between different classes, right? That will include transactional credit, which is used in retail for buying groceries, buying clothes, all the way through to debt on households and buying a car. So that is a big chunk of money. The other number that's also very interesting is that the average household spends 75% of their monthly disposable income on repaying debt. So that's a more indicative number of how bad things are in South Africa right now when it comes to debt.
And 40% of them are in arrears and 48% of borrowers are in default. So if they are spending this way, then what does this mean for the cash and the credit market? Is one going to outweigh the other?
Sure. That's quite a tricky question for me to answer. My view on that, though, is that you've got a situation now where historically there weren't options for people to buy things other than either cash in hand or credit. And we've introduced a product into the market now which allows people buy now and pay later, which means no interest, no fees, and they are then in a better position down the line. Because give you a practical example. Someone goes out today and buys a pair of shoes for 1,000 rand. That 1,000 rand, if they use a personal loan or credit card or machonisa to lend them money, is going to cost them between 1,200 and 1,500 rand over the time that they pay for it. So there's 200 to 500 rand that they've lost to interest. Whereas if you can find a no interest product or a way to pay off that product without paying interest, you've only paid 1,000 rand, which leaves 200 to 500 rand in your wallet to spend again next time.
So then going forward, how do you think the market is going to change? Because nowadays when we talk, we keep on referring to the impact of coronavirus on various sectors of the economy. Now, when it comes to shopping, the last time we were talking about online shopping and the walk-ins at shopping malls. So right now, let's talk about them in the context of coronavirus, if there could be a lockdown, and to try and manage the virus, and how online shopping is going to grow or be affected, as well as the walk-ins at shopping malls in the context of South Africa.
So I'm a firm believer in the fact that two things. One is that people are consumers by nature, so they will always want to buy. So if you lock them down, it doesn't take away their want to buy things or get things. Also, it doesn't take away their need to go and get food into their household and whatnot. So we believe that what you're going to see if there's lockdowns and those kind of things is a move to more online transactions, and that's going to be forced. So people are going to be having to do it, and as a result of doing it this time, they're going to continue doing it on an ongoing basis. So we think it's going to have a nice uplift for online shopping as a whole.
Right. Thank you very much for making time.
Thank you.
Right. Derek Cikes is Commercial Director at Payflex. Let's take a break.